Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Perry. Let's do this. What do you say?
All right.
Well, Shabbat Shalom. Everybody who is watching us online on YouTube, when you go to the comment section below, if you click on the little arrow, you'll see a link for Mishkan Tefillah, which is our prayer book. It's the book that we'll be using throughout our service today. And we will be referring to page numbers throughout, so you can, I think it comes like a flip book, so you can use the page numbers to follow along in the service, so that it's not just Perry performing for you, but a regular Shabbat where we get to worship all together. So we're going to begin with the words from the book of Numbers, a beautiful song, Ma Tovu, page 192.
Let's all sing together.
Yes.
Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, vani berov chastecha, ahavo veitecha, eshtachavel heichal kodshecha, beiratecha. Everyone, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Each morning we wake up and give thanks to God for the little miracles. Getting dressed, getting out of bed, opening our eyes for the first time. So Perry's going to lead us in the Nisim B'chol Yom, thanking God for these miracles, page 198 or page 80.
Wait, my earring. It's stuck on my earring. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nantan lasek vivena lechavhim bein yovum bein laila, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokah haaretz al hamayim. Oh, oops. Pokei ha'ivrim, who opens the eyes of the blind.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim, who frees the captive.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim, who lifts up the fallen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim, who stretches the earth over the waters.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamachim mitzadei gaver, who strengthens our steps.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim, who clothes the naked.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten le'ayef koah, who gives strength to the weary.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hama avir shanai me'enai utnu ma me'alpha pi who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzelem Elohim who has made me in the image of God.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorim who has made me free.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Israel who has made me a Jew.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ozer Yisrael bigvorah who girds Israel with strength.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tiforah who crowds Israel with splendor.
Amen.
We continue now with Chatzi Kaddish, which can be found on page 224 or 106.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה מעלמא יברך חילותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חול ויומי וחיי לכל בית ישראל בגאולה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו Amen.
Together we stand for the call to worship, page 226 or 108. And again, please stand.
Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, 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 lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Barechu et Adonai, Amevorach, Amevorach. Baruch Adonai, Amevorach. Leolam, Leolam va'ed. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Now and forever. Let's join together. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la ya la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la.
Yotzer Or, we give thanks to God for this beautiful, beautiful morning and creation that is all around us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol.
Hameir la'aretz v'la'arim aleha barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, va'al me'orei or sha'asita, yefa'arucha selah.
אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה לנו מהר לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
Perry's going to continue leading us with the English responsive reading on page 230 or 112.
How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears who trust led you to teach them the laws of life. Be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence to your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy.
Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praised be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, abocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavho v'chol nafshecha uvechol meodecha v'chayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam Bevshivtecha, bevitecha, uvleftecha, vadere, ushokbecha, uvkumecha, ukshartam leot yalidecha, bechayule totafot beinenecha, uvtavtam, almezuzo beitecha, uvisharecha. Leman tiskeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yetem kedoshim Elohechem. Ani Elonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. And we read responsively at the bottom of page 239.
The eternal truth is that you alone are God, and there is no one else.
May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice.
Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore.
You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God.
We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy.
Praise to God Most High.
Blessed is God and deserving of blessing. And we join together on page 240 with Micha Mocha. And then we clap our hands like this. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Mi chamocha, who is like you, O God? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, lo ratehi lo tosef ele, lo ratehi lo tosef ele. Shira chadasha, shimechnu ge'ulim, לשמחה לשפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ולפניכנו מחה, יהודה בישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
We've now arrived at the Tefillah at the central prayer of our morning service, page 242 or 124, and together let us stand.
Adonai setzatai tifta ufi agi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Isaac, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagidol, Hagibor ve'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, Vechonei Chalkol, Vezocher Hasdei Avot ve'Imaot, Umevigula ve'Vnehem, Leman Shemo be'Ahava, Melech Ozera Umashiach Umagen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Rat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol hatarach lehoshia. Mahashi barua umorid hagashem. Mechayel haim bechesed. Mechayei hakol berachamim ramim. Somech noflim verchechorim. Umitir asurim. Umekayeh emunato. Lishenei afar. Michamocha bagivurot. Umito melach. Melech memit umechayeh. Umatmiya Yeshua. V'manata lechayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei hakol.
We continue with the Kedoshah on page 248. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשבי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וככזה לזה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. Adir Adirenu Adonai Adonenu Madir Shimacha Bechol Haaretz Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimekomo Echad Hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu Vehu Yashmienu Berachamav Leinei Kol Achai Ani Adonai Elohechem Imloch Adonai Leolam Elohai Zion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Nagid Golecha Ulenetzach Netzachim Gedushadecha Nagdish Veshivchacha Eloheinu Mipinu Lo Yamush Leolam Vaed Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
Please be seated. Before we started services this morning, we had the opportunity of witnessing as Perry placed a talit over her shoulders. She recited the blessing, Lehitatef Batzitzit, to be wrapped with the prayer shawl, which contains, of course, the fringes with the strings we call tzitzit. And this talit that she wears today belonged to her grandfather of blessed memory, and she's wearing it not only with great pride and powerful memory, but also because she wants him and his spirit to be with us here today as it is. And so as we enter silent prayer, as we watched our bat mitzvah lead the service so capably thus far, and as we saw her wrap herself in a beautiful talit, her grandpa's talit, I wanted to share these words before we enter into silent prayer as we think about not only symbolically, but also on a spiritual level, what the talit ultimately means, especially today, Perry. Whoever wrapped in a talit in one's youth will never forget. Taking it out of a sack, opening the folded talit, spreading it, kissing it, the border along its length. Afterwards, a great sweep over the head like the heavens, like a chuppah, like a parachute. And afterwards, folding it around one's head, wrapping it and holding it tight, letting it fold you like a cocoon, and then opening it like wings for flying. And why are there stripes on a talit? Why are there not boxes like a cheese board? Because squares are finite. Squares are finite without hope, and stripes come from the idea of infinity and go on to infinity like the runways at the airport, so that angels may land and take off. When you wrap yourself in a talit, you cannot forget coming out of a swimming pool or the ocean and being wrapped in a great big towel and casting it over one's head and wrapping it tight, and shivering and even laughing a little, and the feeling of blessing and warmth. And so as you wear this talit today, which your parents also used at their wedding, we think of infinity. We think of the days that are going to come in the years ahead when others will wear that talit or use it under a chuppah, or use it as a chuppah and stand under it. And as we enter this time for silent prayer, let us think about those moments when we felt wrapped in the warmth of something that was more powerful than the material with which it was made, something that represents infinity. Let's take a moment for silent meditation.
continue together on page 258 with a prayer for peace. Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom. Tova uvracha ba'olam, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Baruch atah Adonai hamevarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Amen.
Reading of Torah, and we get to begin a new book of Torah today, Leviticus, Vayikra. It's always exciting to have a new beginning, and this central book of the Torah is, well, really the, if you will, prototype for our service today, even though we won't be sacrificing any bulls or turtle doves or anything like that. The fire's not working today, so, but nonetheless, pretty much what we do today in synagogues throughout the world is foundationally found in Leviticus. So, Perry, it's very cool, and you're very cool, so why not start a new book of Torah? We're going to begin on page 362 or 244 in your prayer books. And when we get to the Torah service, we will give you page numbers in your commentaries or chapter and verse if you'd like to follow along. 362.
Ein
Kamocha ba'Elohim
Adonai, ve'en kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed, Adonai os le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
Please stand
פתחנו, מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ולדבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו. גדול אדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו.
Before we do our virtual hakafa, I will walk up the middle aisle. You're all welcome to blow kisses to the Torah, and then everyone at home, of course, can blow kisses to the Torah as well. But I wanted to remind you that the Torah is our precious heritage. It is the gift that we received from God at Mount Sinai almost 3,500 years ago. Typically at this time, Perry, we have the Torah handed Lador, Vador, Vador, from generation to generation to generation. But we think of all of those who are here, your parents, your grandparents, but we also think about great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. You represent all of their hopes and their dreams. And so now the responsibility of Torah, of teaching Torah, learning Torah, hearing the words of the Torah, but also becoming part of the story of the Jewish people is your responsibility. And we hand that responsibility to you with the love, the deep love that we can feel in this room of those who are here, of the great-great-great-great-great-grandparents who probably live somewhere in Eastern Europe, going all the way back to Sinai, Lador, Vador, Vador, from generation to generation to generation. And now let's do it. Adonai Hagedurah
והגבורה
והתפארת והנצח
וההוד, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ,
כל בשמיים ובארץ, אדוני הממלכה והעמיד נעשה לכל לראש.
רוממו
אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו
אדוני
אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש
אדוני אלוהינו רוממו.
כי
קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו.
Please have a seat. If you have a Torah commentary at home and you'd like to follow along, I'm talking about the Torah commentary, revised edition, from Gunther Plaut. We are on page 660 to begin the book of Leviticus. And in your Bibles, it's not very hard to find. Turn to the beginning of the book of Leviticus, and there we are. Yay. So we are going to learn a little bit later from Perry about some of the intricacies, as I was talking about this being the paradigmatic, I like to use big words, the paradigm for Jewish worship and how we worship today, but she's going to be talking about replacing the idea of the animal sacrifices with opening up a prayer book and praying, but also praying with our hearts. And of course, she's going to give a shout out to camp, which doesn't surprise us at all. So, Perry, are you ready for some Torah chanting? Yes, you are supposed to say yes, but you could say no, but we're still going to make you do it anyway. Okay, so Cantor's going to call our aliyahs, the people who will be reciting from the blessings for Torah. What's that? Oh, we've got a Torah blessing, so unless you're living in the same household, thank you. Unless you're living in the same household, we ask you to come to this pulpit. Let me do a quick spray down just to make sure all of Cantor's germs are... I'm telling you, and I do it mostly because it drives you nuts. That's mostly, pretty much. Now, we have a sanitized and very orange, pungent smelling pulpit. Yes. Let's call for the first aliyah, our bat mitzvah sister and grandmother, Rachel and Joan.
Tamod Hanasaha Ya'amdu Rishon.
Both on this one? This one? Two separate ones?
No, wait. No, you can both stand together if you like.
Take your mask off.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, it smells like oranges.
It's beautiful.
Oh,
It always smells like oranges.
I told you it was a pungent orange smell.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
okay.
3.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamparach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Vaydaber Adonai Elav me'ochel moed lemor daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amartach alehem Adam ki akriv mikem korban ladonai min habahema min habakar umin hatzon takrivu et korban hem imola korbano min habakar zachar tamim yakrivenu el petach ochel moed yakriv oto lirtzono lifnei Adonai. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam nata b'tohenu Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. You're ready to go down?
Be finished, yeah?
And now we call for the honor of our second aliyah this morning, Phyllis Lerner and Gil Lerner, grandparents of our bat mitzvah.
Do you want to go this way?
Tamod Sipora Yamod Gedalia Yamdu Sheni.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamparach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha banu mikol hamim, v'notan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Besamach yado al rosh ha'olah vineyard salo lechaper alav. Veshachat et bein habakar lifnei Adonai vehikrivu b'nei Aharon hakohanim et hadam. Vezarku et hadam al hamizbeach saviv asher petach ochel moed. Vehishit et ha'olah venitach ota
Lintaheha.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata bechotenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
We now call for the honor of our third aliyah, parents of our bat mitzvah, Danny and Rob Matasinko. And you guys can actually go stand with Perry.
Yamod Ruven ben Nisan, Tamod Deva Bracha Yamdu Shelishit.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Venotenu b'nei Aharon hakohen eish al hamizbeach ve'arechu esim al ha'esh ve'archu b'nei Aharon hakohen et hanetachim et harosh va'et hapader al ha'esim asher al ha'esh asher al hamizbeach ve'kirbo uchrav yirchat b'chamayim ve'hiktir hakohen et hakol hamizbeach ola ishe reach nichoa l'Adonai.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'hayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Before we call our bat mitzvah for her bat mitzvah aliyah, let's take a moment to think about our friends and family in need of our prayers for healing this Shabbat, wishing for all of them a refuah shlema, refuah tanefesh, refuah taguf, healing of mind, body, and spirit. If you wish to, you can type in the name of a loved one in the remarks or comment section below on YouTube or Facebook. Mishaberach Avitin Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Mitin Esaraf Grach v'Leah. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bring blessings, heal those who are ill, the names of those who are in our hearts and in our thoughts. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion, for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them all a complete renewal of body and of spirit. And let us say, Amen. And now it is our great honor to call for her bat mitzvah aliyah, the one, the only, Perry Matasinko.
Tamod, Maya bat Ruvain ulevo habracha Chazak v'nitchazik
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol hamin v'na'antan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Ve'emin hatzon korbano min ha'kesavim o min ha'izim le'olah zachar tamim yakrivenu ve'shachat oto al yereh hamizbeach safona lifnei Adonai ve'zarku b'nei Aharon hakohanim et hadam al hamizbeach
Saviv.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam neta betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Give your mommy daddy a hug and kiss.
We're going to take a moment now to lift and redress the Torah, and you'll be able to see a big gap in between the end of last week's portion, which was Shemot, the end of Shemot, and the beginning of the book of Leviticus. So not only is it easy to find in your Bible, but it's easy to find in the Torah as well. So you may notice that as the cantor lifts the Torah. Everyone, please stand as the Torah is lifted to be redressed.
Vezot haTorah asher sa Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. 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 Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe.
We're very excited to, of course, please be seated. We're very excited to begin Leviticus. We're also very excited that Pesach is coming up in a week. The Haftorah for this Shabbat is the Haftorah that is associated with Leviticus. The Torah portion goes over all kinds of sacrifices and offerings and sort of, as I said last night, taking the Mishkan, the tabernacle, out for a spin and starting to use it to actually communicate with God. So the Haftorah from the book of Isaiah this week is from what we call Isaiah, but we attribute it to someone that we call Deutero-Isaiah. We believe that Isaiah was actually two separate authors, but we call them both Isaiah. I know that's a little confusing. Anything after chapter 40 in Isaiah is called Deutero-Isaiah. And these are the prophecies, the speeches that Isaiah gave in the land of Babylon during the Babylonian exile. And so it has a lot of words of comfort and messages to the Israelites that they will one day return to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel, and reestablish God's presence through the building of the second temple. This is around the 6th century before the Common Era. So first, let's hear the blessing and then the Haftorah from Isaiah 42. In fact, for those of you who are following along, I can give you the exact passage. We're going to be chanting from Isaiah chapter 43, so you can follow along around verse 21-ish.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divrechem ha'me'enarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai hamocher b'torah v'divrehem ammo v'Yisrael amo v'yehamet v'zedek. Oh my gosh. Okay. Amzu yatzarti li tehilati yesaperu velo oti karata Yaakov ki agata bi Yisrael lo he'eveta li se olotecha uzvachecha lo kidbatani lo he'evaticha bemincha velo hogaticha bilvona lo kanita li v'kesev kaneh v'chelev zevachecha lo hirvitani he'evatani bechatotecha hogatani bechovonotecha anochi anochi hu moche fishaecha lema'ani vechatotecha lo eskor.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'yoseh ha'medaber u'mekayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'neviim ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת Amen. And now Perry will share her Devar Torah, what she has learned from studying this week's portion, Parashat Vayikra.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'd like to start off by saying thank you all for coming, whether you are on live stream or in person. This speech, or Devar Torah, was really difficult. I spent my science class, my ELA class, and even my nap time in order to really understand the Torah portion for this Shabbat, and I think I got it. The Torah portion for my bat mitzvah is called Vayikra, which is found at the very beginning of the book of Leviticus. Vayikra means he called, in reference to God calling Moses to have an editorial meeting at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The rabbis also called the book of Leviticus Torat Kohanim, which means instructions of the priests. The entire book of Leviticus contains all the rules for worshiping God, all kinds of sacrifices, and how we should be holy in general. This portion was all about animal sacrifice as a way of communicating with God, especially when the Israelites sinned, or did something they were guilty of. Doing something that is harmful to yourself or bad to someone else and not stopping it is the concept of sin, and sins can make us feel guilty. The sacrifice of animals is connecting the worshiper to God. The word sacrifice in Hebrew is korban, also means to draw closer. Giving something valuable really shows the meaning you're putting behind it, and also that you aren't just doing it to do it, you actually want to. In ancient times, when one committed a sin and they felt guilty, they would repay what was lost, would add in a little gift to the person they harmed, and would sacrifice their best animal to God as an apology. One concept in this portion that I thought was cool is that if you weren't wealthy enough to own a new animal, like a cow, there's an option where you can use something less valuable, like a bird, which is much less expensive. This is cool because it shows that every sacrifice is different for different people. Today, we don't offer animal sacrifices. Yet, people must sacrifice their personal comfort in order to keep others safe. The way we connect with God now is through prayer. The rabbis teach if the people of Israel say, "We are poor and have no sacrifices to bring for offering," God tells them, "I need only words." Even if they complain that they have no synagogue in their city, God tells them to pray in their fields, and if not there, on their beds, and if not there, then in their hearts. Unlike sacrifices, which depend on an altar and a gift, prayer is dependent on the honesty of one's heart. Our tradition teaches that prayer is a kind of sacrifice. To me, as a bat mitzvah, this is important because I can become close to God through learning about what has been taught and by praying. In my eyes, an authentic prayer would really be taking the time to understand what the prayer means and being able to interpret its deeper meaning. I always felt most connected to God when I pray at camp, when we have silent prayer, and when I'm around the people I care about. It took many people to make this day special, starting off with Mom. Thank you so much for supporting me with everything I do, for teaching me how to be independent and responsible. I love when we get to have our one-on-one car rides, and we used to take me out of school for special events like Perry Day. To my father, I always enjoy complaining to you about stuff you don't care about, even though you almost always listen. I have so much fun every time you take just me out to dinner and we get to catch up about the unimportant stuff that never gets heard. To my beloved Rachie Poo, my best friend and the only person I can always count on. You have always been there for me to punch, yell at, cry, or rant to. You have always been there. I would definitely not be the same way without you, and I wouldn't want our relationship any other way. Grandma and Grandpa, thank you for being my staycation place and somewhere I know I'm always welcome. Thank you to Grandpa for always playing your loud YouTube videos in restaurants and for letting Rachel and I drive the golf carts, even though it wasn't allowed. To Grandma, for always letting me be your photo model and for teaching me new things every time I'm with you. Every morning I'm at your house, I love cooking and eating the bug pancakes that I will never get sick of. I am expecting that pan as a gift in the future. And then there's my bubby. Although I always forget to call, I love our long talks on the phone and how everyone has to explain how technology works. I really want to hear more about what it was like when you were a child, and hopefully we can do it in person finally. Although Papa isn't here with us, he is forever in our hearts, and I'm so happy to be wearing his tallis right now. Last but not least, I'd like to thank Cantor Ettinger, Jason Bronowitz, Rabbi Kahn, and my tutor Wendy, who all helped me come prepared with as little stress as possible. I have studied, practiced, and stressed all for this day, and I'm so sad it's over so quickly. The hardest part was definitely time management. It took me a while to realize how important it really was. Shortcutting my way out of it doesn't help me either. Moving forward as a full member of the Jewish community is really important to me because I will obviously continue going to Camp Stein, and this is something I've imagined since the first day I've learned about it. Thank you all for coming. It means so much that you come celebrate with me. Shabbat Shalom.
Perry, it's so nice to hear you teach us, and thank you for doing such a great job with such a difficult parsha. And I want to call your mom and your dad up now to share their thoughts and their words with you as they prepared for this day. And let them say some things to you that come from the heart.
Just in case. Have a little kiss first. Oh. Thank you, everyone who's joined us today, near and far. We have people checking in from here in Arizona, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, California, Maryland, and Australia, and also the members of our congregation. Perry, we're so proud of the job you did today. You totally crushed it.
Perry, I dreaded creating a photo montage for you. I have over 90,000 photos on my iPhone, but it turns out that reflecting on your 13 years of life turned out to be a gift. Here's what the photos revealed. A toddler who always smiled and found joy in the simplest things. A girl who looked up to her big sister and still does in every way. So many sports and activities. Dance, soccer, basketball, softball, volleyball. You thrived under pressure and always had fun. Snowboarding, rock climbing, surfing, a reminder that you're brave enough to try anything and you excel at everything. A few memories stood out. At age 7, we took you to Mexico and you jumped on the shoulders of spring breakers in the pool. And that's when we realized that you loved being where the action is and that you loved to be the life of the party. You're always surrounded by large groups of friends, lifelong friends from school and Camp Stein. Dad always says it's because you just have that it factor. In recent years, you posed for us less, and our camera roll filled with pictures of Ringo instead. But you continue to make us proud. We get special reports from teachers and coaches for killer grades, acts of kindness, taking on leadership roles in student government, and helping new and younger teammates.
Your Torah portion reminds us of the importance of sacrifice and making adjustments, just as the transition occurred from the tradition of animal sacrifice to prayer as a form of worship. Praying locally replaced traveling to Jerusalem, kind of like Zoom calls replaced school, travel, and many meetings this past year. In true Perry fashion, you went with the flow of the year's events as we mourn the loss of your papa, and so many people struggled during that pandemic. Not one complaint. You continue to sacrifice your screen time and nap time to help, whether we asked you to assemble furniture, cook your own meals, or help around the house. You're independent, helpful, kind, generous, and always have the spirit of giving. We are grateful for our family's longtime affiliation with this synagogue, where you've attended preschool, religious school, and are a 5-year veteran of Camp Stein. We hope you carry on the Jewish tradition and values you've learned here with you for a lifetime.
Perry, our wish for you in the future is that you use your wisdom, poise, and passion for good and to take action. Find your unique style and voice. You be you and you will shine. I almost made it. Whatever you do in the years ahead, we love you and support you. Great job today, Perry. Mazel tov.
So Perry, we're going to take a moment now to return the Torah to the Aron HaKodesh. Everyone, please stand. If you're following along at home, we're on page 368 or 250. And then you guys can come up, and Rachel, you'll join us on the bima now too as we put the Torah back and then say some really wonderful things about your sister. So everyone, please. Oh, everyone is standing. You can stand at home too as we return the Torah.
יחללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. אותו על ארץ ושמיים, וירן קרן לעמו. תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו. הללויה, הללויה. עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני
why don't you come stand right over here and have your parents kind of flank you behind you with their presence, and your sister, of course, as well. Like your dad said, we've known each other a very long time, and Rachel too, mostly because of Izzy, but also because she has been part of our synagogue and camp and religious school, and became bat mitzvah here just like you. And Perry, you are here today at a very complicated time in world history. And the cool part is, decades from now, you're going to be one of those kids that gets to say, oh yeah, I became a bat mitzvah during the pandemic. Which is, I think, something that may be a claim to fame later. But right now, it's still very real, and your family has suffered acutely from the pandemic. Your dad was probably one of the first people in the universe to get it, and I don't know if that's public knowledge, but it was like way, way back when, before we knew what losing taste and smell meant. But it's impacted your family, and yet you persevered. And as your parents beautifully put it, it is in some ways not a surprise that you were able to not just persevere, but to excel and to grow from this process and to do something that we know for years you've been thinking about. I don't want to embarrass you, but I know for a couple of years you've been working on your speech, and at least in your head, right?
That was rough.
But I do want to share with you, and I typically don't actually bring the Bible up with me, but I wanted to share the words of your Haftorah that I think are so poignant, because this is really God's message, through Isaiah, God's message to the people that this isn't, Isaiah says to the people here, it's not the first time you're going to suffer. It's probably not the last time you're going to suffer. And his message to the Israelites is as follows, as a reminder of what it looks like to go through something that is challenging, and for them, tragic. They're not in Israel anymore. They have no temple anymore. They're living in Babylonia, which is now Iraq, so they're far away. But here's what God says. Ki etzak mayim al tzameh v'gozlim al yabasha etzok ruchi al zarecha uvirchati al tzitzecha. God says, just as I pour water on thirsty soil and streams on dry ground, so will I pour my spirit on your descendants, my blessings onto your offspring. They shall flourish amidst the grass like willows. And I kept thinking of you when I thought of these words. What was Isaiah saying? Isaiah was saying that there are times of drought. There are times when life seems barren, when the world around us seems the opposite of an evergreen or a willow. A willow is an evergreen tree, just sort of brown and gray. Yet, God promises that the offspring will come about, and they will bring about through their acts and their deeds and their mere presence this idea of the willow that grows. You're the willow. Why do they choose the willow? Because a willow is an evergreen. It's got deep roots. And you, my dear, you're like a willow. You bring color to the world. You bring a reminder of life. And like a plant or tree with deep roots, you have a very old soul. An old soul is, as you know, someone who's not only got deep roots, they're like connected to the ground that they walk on, but they also have a spirit that has the power, the ability to inform others. And during a crazy time, to bring a sense of renewed life. You are that descendant that Isaiah refers to 3,000 years ago. And so on this day of your bat mitzvah, there's a challenge. And the challenge is, what do you do when you're an old soul? What do you do with an old soul? What do you do with deep roots? What do you do when your parents and your friends and your family all know that in many ways you're kind of their go-to person because you provide some anchoring for us? In some ways, you're more mature than some adults. I'm not pointing to the Cantor, but than some adults in the way that your soul works. You still get to be a kid. My point is, what do you do with that responsibility? And so here's the answer. The answer comes from the Psalms, from Tehillim. The answer is that it is for days like today that God created the world. It is for celebrations like today that God put us all here to be in your presence. Use that power, that anchoring that you have, that willow-like strength and beauty that you provide. Use it wisely and use it knowing that people will follow your lead and your example. Give yourself a break from time to time. It's okay to take a nap. And it's okay, sorry, Dad. It's okay to take a nap and it's okay to take a break. It's exhausting being the willow. But you are. And you have so many things that you're going to be doing in this world. We all know it. I loved talking to you at Starbucks yesterday about your sort of post-high school plans and traveling, and we talked about, sorry guys, we talked about gap years, and we talked about all kinds of things. I get it. You want to get out there in the world, and you want to maybe not conform to the way that other people do things. I think that's okay, but balance that wonderful, wondrous spirit that you have with your commitments, with your responsibilities, and you will be more than okay. You will flourish like the willow. So on this day, you have great responsibility now, my adult Jewish friend, but be a kid. Go to camp. Have a great summer. Let's get back to normal and know that you will be part of righting the wrongs, that you will be part of putting the ship in the right direction. And while that's a lot to tell a 13-year-old, and probably a lot to hear, give yourself a break from time to time. But I'm not making a prediction here. I am telling you what I have seen since you're little. We love you. We love who you are, and we love how we feel around you. And I know I speak for myself and for Rabbi Mason-Barkin, for Stacy, who talks about you constantly, and J-Bro, who talks about you constantly. Cantor and I are going to ask for God's blessings on you now on behalf of all of them, but also, again, on behalf of the generations that stood before. And thank you for letting us be part of such a beautiful, beautiful morning in Shabbat. Perry, may God bless you and protect you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elayich v'chunayich.
May God's countenance be lifted upon you, be gracious to you.
Yis Adonai panav elayich ve'asem lach shalom, shalom.
May God's face be lifted always to shine on you and grant you peace all the days of your life.
Ve'asem lach shalom, shalom.
Amen. Siman tov, mazel tov, mazel tov.
Siman tov, and mazel tov, mazel tov. Siman tov, and mazel tov, mazel tov. Siman tov, Kehilah. Siman tov, and mazel tov, mazel tov. Siman tov, and mazel tov, mazel tov. Siman tov, and mazel tov, mazel tov. Siman tov, Kehilah.
Please be seated. Oh, actually, we're going to remain standing. But I'm glad you had a small break to sit down there for a second. But we are going to continue with Aleinu and with Kaddish. So everyone, again, please stand. At home, you can stand. 586, 282.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
On this Shabbat, we share our deepest sympathies as we note the passing of the following people who were recently laid to their eternal rest, whose families are observing the immediate 7 and 30 days of mourning. Tony Durami, mother of Sylvia Spector. Corrine Weiss-Flagenheimer, mother of Steve Weiss, David Weiss, and Donna Ballard. We also remember with love those of our congregational family whose yahrzeits occur this week. Their names have been lovingly listed on our Shabbat flyer. If anyone would like to either hear, say out loud the name of a loved one you would like us to take into our hearts with our own, or if you'd like to type into the comment section on YouTube or Facebook the name of a loved one, please do so at this time. May all of their memories be for a blessing, the door of a door, and then bless the generations to come. Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 598 or 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach le'alam u'le'amei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabbah min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to those who are grieving. Together we say, Amen.
We'll conclude this morning with a prayer for peace. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
Mazel tov, Peri, Shabbat shalom, everyone.
I've been waiting for this kiddush, personally. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. L'chaim. I don't even have to do it anymore. That's the beautiful thing. You put it right back up there. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom.